Joining me now is Deroy Murdock, Fox News contributor, and Julian Epstein, former House Judiciary Counsel. Great to see you both, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Deroy, the president is going to need a lot of the political capital that I think he has. And by the way, that political capital has grown since the election. He got just about 50%, maybe even a little bit under the total because there were a lot of independents in there running too. But right now, Gallup poll came out with a poll showing he has 51% support. That's way above what he had when he started in 2017. That was 44%. Now it's at 51%. Can he use that political capital that he has right off the bat to get these things done, to give it to those sanctuary cities who are being so hypocritical?
Yeah, I think he can and he should. And I think even President Trump's critics, I think, have been rather dazzled at how he's appointed his entire cabinet, the heads of multiple agencies and so on, in just a matter of a couple of weeks. I mean, whether you like or dislike what Donald J. Trump is trying to do, he's certainly moving quickly and not just kicking back and relaxing until he becomes president, particularly compared to the current administration. I almost said previous, the current administration, where President Biden's, I think, off somewhere in the Caribbean at the moment. So I think that really has bolstered his strength even since the election, and he ought to use that political capital to go after particularly illegal alien criminals such as this monster who set this woman on fire in the New York subway system just a few days ago.
Unbelievable. If that doesn't do it, I don't know what will. Julian, we've seen some amazing transformations. Actually, some people like yourself, I think, have said we haven't transformed. We've remained clear to the original ideals of the Democratic Party. It's the party itself that has changed. But we see John Fetterman and a couple of other people, yourself, complaining about the wokeness in the Democratic Party right now. Do you think that's going to spread? Is it just beginning? The germ is just beginning to spread among Democrats who realize that the American people have moved on, even if they haven't?
Well, that's the central question that faces the Democrats, David. The question is whether the Democratic leadership can part ways with the groups on the left who have enforced the orthodoxy of the oppression Olympics, which is sort of a bankrupt religion that has governed the Democratic Party and has made it very unpopular on social issues and on economic issues. And the question is whether the Democrats can move away from that far left drift of the last 4 years and move back towards the center. I haven't seen any evidence yet that the Democratic leadership has the guts to stand up to the groups. But that's the central question. One of the reasons that Trump is so popular right now, and you've seen this realignment, you talk about the Gallup polls, this realignment's been going on for 2 years. And one of the reasons is you can point to under the first Trump administration, real wages grew 7%. Under Biden, they declined by about that much. So people like the economic results they saw from the Trump first term. There's optimism now that they can build. If the Democrats are smart, they will stop the resistance and the demonization of the other side, and they will try to compete with Republicans on building on issues that matter to the working class. Automation, manufacturing. China's about to get 45% of the global manufacturing capacity.
Crypto's another one that Trump has jumped in on.
100%.
Yeah, well, Deroy, and yet you still have these people in the media that are singing the same old tune like nothing ever happened between November 1st and now. The Hill just came out with an article. It was an editorial. It wasn't written by the staff, but it was written by two geniuses from Yale and Columbia Law School, suggesting that Dems try to block Donald Trump from becoming president based on the suggestion, by the way, that even Jack Smith didn't make, that Trump is an insurrectionist. They still haven't learned from the lawfare debacle. I mean, that didn't work at all. In fact, I think that helped Donald Trump become president, don't you?
Absolutely helped him get in. I think people felt that he was being treated very unfairly, unlike any other American's been treated before, and that very much helped him get reelected. And as far as this effort by the part of some Democrats, including Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland, that somehow they're going to step in and prevent Trump from being seated and inaugurated on January 20th. You know, I thought all along that we were told throughout this last campaign, democracy matters. President Trump is a threat to democracy. Election denial is the next, worst crime, perhaps even beyond treason. And here are these people saying maybe they could use the 14th Amendment to block Trump from getting sworn in under the concept of insurrection. He actually was, as you recall, impeached on that matter, and he was not convicted by the Senate. So to whatever degree,
that's why Jack Smith didn't charge him with that. I mean, it's as simple. Julian, These are,
Exactly.
I would use,
he
I would
survived the
use
Senate
a
trial,
phrase.
so he's not guilty of this.
I would use a phrase if this wasn't a family-friendly show, but they are smart A lawyers. They think they're the smartest in the class. They were head of the law review at Yale, I think one of them. The other was at Columbia. I mean, this is supposedly the future of the legal department of the Democratic Party. I don't see them turning around. However, I have to mention something that happened on CNN. I'm going to roll the tape on this. A CNN analyst talking about how Joe Biden's presidency will be remembered. Roll that.
A couple weeks before the election, I had a conversation with a senior person in the White House, and I said, if Harris loses, most of the way that Biden is going to be remembered, at least in the short term, is the guy who was just in between the Trump terms.
The guy just in between the Trump two terms. Do you think that's how Biden's going to be remembered, Julian?
I think right now most Americans think of Biden as a failed presidency on the global stage, on economic affairs, and letting the country go way too far left with what I again call the victimology or the oppression Olympics. But to go back to this question on the 14th Amendment, I'll give you a phrase that you can use that is family friendly, which is George Orwell. George Orwell said that some ideas are so stupid that only intellectuals could believe them.
That's right.
And this is exactly an example that the two professors you cited, it's exactly an example of that. I mean, it is one very dubious from a legal point of view. I doubt it would survive any serious scrutiny in the courts. But politically, it's exactly what the Democrats have been doing since 2015. And that strategy of opposing and demonizing Trump has failed. And Democrats need to realize it's failed. It's a dead-end street. If they want to compete with the Republicans, if they want to claw their way back to relevancy, they need to show that they can build. You look at the infrastructure program, for example. The broadband initiatives never even got out of the box. Charging stations, they built 8 of them. The public confidence in the Democrats' ability to actually build something meaningful that relates in any serious way to the middle class, to go back to the political center on cultural issues, on things like immigration. Voters don't have confidence in the Democratic Party to be able to do that. If the Democrats are smart, that's what they would focus on.
Yeah, but again, I just don't see the smarts coming, particularly from governors, Deroy. And we just had our own governor here in New York, Governor Hochul, just came out with a new program in which she's going to charge oil and gas companies $75 billion in so-called reparations for climate change. Reparations for climate. By the way, who's going to pay that $75 billion? Do you think it's going to come out of the pockets of the executives at the oil companies? No. Taxpayers and consumers are going to pay for that $75 billion. And Americans get it. They understand that now, right?
Well, if it even gets that far. I mean, this sounds like a recipe for instant litigation. Is going to go right to court. And the main question will be, if you're the head of Exxon or Mobil, all right, how can you blame us for hurricanes or flood damage or whatever? How much of it was the fault, if any, of the oil companies? How much of it was Mother Nature? How much of it was just regular weather patterns? It's not like, when somebody sets a building on fire, you can say, oh, there goes the arson, cuff him and throw him in jail. The climate and weather don't work that way. And it's going to be very hard to determine, what percentage, if any, the oil companies are to blame, if they are. And that's going to be litigated. And you'll have expert witnesses on both sides saying, yes, they're guilty. No, they're not guilty. And this is not going to go nowhere. And it's just another distraction. I wish Kathy Hochul would spend some of her time focusing on maybe making these subways safe and the streets safe and cleaning up the trash and killing the rats. Maybe she ought to focus on that.
Yeah, I think crime is the #1 example, starting with migrant crime and what happened last Sunday in the subway. We're going to be talking more about that coming up later in the show. Gentlemen, we've got to leave it at that. Julian Epstein and Deroy Murdock.